Sleep deprivation. So this is the topic for today. I've been asked to go a little bit deeper into it, and this is my experience, what works for me, what I've experienced. I'll start with talking about the importance of the micro naps and sleep during big ultras, obviously especially towards the backyard ultras when you're trying to go for a couple of days and you only get those few minutes each lap, 10, 15, sometimes less. You got to start utilizing as it goes deep into the race. You got to start getting micro naps in and sleep where you can, because your body will only go for so long without sleep. So ways you can do that is with the meditation. For me, personally, I know a lot of other runners that do it, is the noise cancelling headphones. They're basically a game changer. You need to, when you come in from that lap, you need to be able to put them on, and with your music, meditation music, whatever you use, sound healing, just things to, shut out the outside noise. Because from experience as well, when I first started doing these, you might come in, you got 20 minutes spare and you're just sitting there in your chair or, trying to shut your eyes and go to sleep. But if you don't have the headphones on, you can hear all the noise around you, people cheering, clapping, all the talk, all the chatter, and it all just creeps into your mind and doesn't let you rest properly. So I think the headphones are an absolute must. And then obviously working out, the meditation practices, so you can learn to, shut off and sleep. And if you're at a start finish race, obviously you might not have your headphones on you, but you can just come in and just lie back and get that 10, 15 minute sleep or whatever you need to, recharge so you can continue and finish the race. For me, I'll go into a bit of my training methods towards that help with the sleep deprivation. I'm going to be different to a lot of other people, as I've learned to over the last few years, for a long time now, really, minimal sleep, I guess. I get up really early for work as it is with the construction. And then so for me to get my training in, I've got to get up even earlier, which, chews up time. I go to bed early or whatever I can do, and learn on recovery and, meditation and things with the mind to help still stay fresh. I personally don't believe you need 8 hours sleep. I know there's science behind saying there's science behind saying you don't. I know through the study that I've done with the yoga, some of the gurus and that they're out there, they say you don't need 8 hours, and, anywhere between the 5 to 7 is fine. You can easily function off 5 hours, 6 hours sleep if you're, getting enough recovery and rest in other times. You don't have to be asleep to get recovery and healing processes that can help. So that's just me, in my opinion, I guess. Another aspect you got to get used to is the darkness. So if you're someone that's always, running the daylight, when the sun's up, and, that's easy to do that. Like when it's, the sun's out and the day's begun, like obviously, yeah, it can be hot and stuff like that, but, that everyone's awake. You got to get used to running in the middle of the night, when the times when it sucks and you'd hate to be up, that early running, especially towards the, backyard ultras, because you just run all through the night. And if, you haven't really been up training in the middle of the night or in those dark hours, it's going to be really new for you. So that's an aspect that's going to take time to learn to do. And, that slowly creeps into the sleep deprivation if that's the time you're usually asleep, and you got to stay awake when you're not usually, being awake. So I think you still need the rest and recovery, and still need to get good night's sleeps. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. That helps you heal and recover, but you also need to get used to being able to function and do things when you didn't get the good sleep that you need. So that takes practice and training in itself. I'm going to dive into a bit of the stuff I didn't really talk about before, is the hallucinations. This really comes along basically when you're, real sleep deprived. It'll be different for everyone. It doesn't always come across as what people have in their mind as hallucinations, like seeing, fictional characters, like you have your mind perceived in your mind from hallucination. Hallucinations can be anything from perception changes, that's what I like to call them, is, when you think up ahead there's a log or whatever, and then you get there and it's a shadow off the tree. I've experienced multiple perception changes in my time. plenty of things where you do start seeing things, not necessarily the cartoon characters and the things people would think you see when you're hallucinating, but you do start, all of a sudden you might see a figure and think that, you know, oh, there's someone standing there. I've seen people standing there with a trench coat and I swore it was, and then you get up there and it's just a shadow off the tree. I've seen signs that are, you know, up ahead when you're running towards, and you get there and there's no sign there. Of you know, another thing I quite often get, and I got it recently in Sydney, was just from the sleep depth, and that's when I know I'm starting to get, you know, fall way behind in the sleep, is when you're right when you're moving, like when you're running and you know, I had my sunnies on and everything's fine, you're moving sweet, and then you go to the toilet, take your sunnies off, and then when you actually stop and sit down, all of a sudden things can be moving. I was looking at the walls and the walls were just spinning and moving, and looking at my skin and it's just crawling and waving and moving. So you just everything's just shot. You're just so sleep deprived and you can't focus. I've had other ones that I think it was at Dead Cow Gully there when I was racing Sam there. Fell way behind in the sleep department. And I remember I was coming in and the food I was eating out of the bowl, I was just trying to scoop in my mouth and it was just swirling in around the bowl. And yeah, you know, I try to lie back and look up the tent, and the tent would be just spinning around. That's probably the perception that really happens a lot. Especially another one that happens is the deeper you get is, you know, it's obviously hard to, like I said before, focus and reason with yourself with the struggle side of things, but it's also, you can get disorientated where you forget, you know, don't know where you are on the course. I've had times when I just literally pull up and I'm just like, you know, when it's down to the final couple, so there's no one out in the course, and so, you know, you're spread out, you don't see each other, and you're just like, what am I doing? You forget what you're doing. You know, you got to try to work out you're trying to work out with your watch where you are, what time it is, what you used to, what was usually easy, and you figure out where you are. You can't add up the mass. You can't figure out, you know, how far you got to go, where you got to go, and it starts chewing into the time. Next thing you know, you might look down, you realize you've been doing it 10 minutes slower than you need to, so that's can, you know, throw you off, and all of a sudden you can't get back, or you know, spiral out of control with the mind again. I've had ones where you pull up to go to the toilet, you're just staring into space, into the trees, and then all of a sudden you just come to and you realise, what am I even doing? I'm not even going to the toilet. How long have I been staring at the tree for? That was at Dead Cow Gully, that one. And then also coming in at that point just before that was, I'd sit, you know, all of a sudden I'd just like see a log up ahead, and next thing I know, I look down, I'm just sitting on the log, and don't even recall actually going up to the log and sitting down. Like, everything moves differently. Your mind just does not function properly. And obviously your focus is, you know, just thrown right out. Really hard to concentrate on, you know, aspects of a course. And yeah, they're just major things with the sleep, the deprivation, that people don't realise that can change the whole, you know, turn of a lap or an event real fast. And it's, you know, really difficult to get through a certain amount of distance or, you know, another lap when you start getting like that, because you just get thrown right out. I'll go into a few little stories about sleep deprivation. It's not really in the race, but it's after the race, because I've done this a few times now, and it's definitely not something I'm proud of. But I've also you know, I've done it a few times, but I'll go just tell the recent story when me and James both just, you know, finished Clint Eastwood together. We just did 72 hours and decided to pull up for a good train run towards our other goals and smash that out. And James, you know, ended up resting, and I just jumped in the car, like packed all my stuff up, hadn't even slept yet, jumped in the car, and then just started trying to drive home. And once again, dumb idea. Nearly crashed a few times or multiple times, you know, with the sleep depth going into what the brain does. Like, I'd be wide awake, have the music cranking, have the, you know, the window down with my head hanging out, like, so I'm wide awake, and then in a split second, next thing you know, I'm just drifting across the other side of the road and just coming onto, veering over to oncoming traffic, and I'd just look in the vision mirror like, whoa. And luckily, like, I don't know if I was swerving with the cars behind me or braking. This actually happened to me going through the Clem tunnel there. And with the lights of that, we just shut me off. I was, you know, just so tired. And anyway, I ended up pulling over, doing the smart thing before I did die, and just basically got some micro naps in before I headed home. But, you know, had to keep doing that all the way home, because every time I jump back in the car and start going, because I still hadn't had proper sleep, I was still starting to switch off. And I know I'm babbling off, it's nothing to do with the race stuff, but that's just an example of sleep deprivation, how important it is to, definitely try to keep on top of it as much as you can while you're racing. And then, after that story, definitely I won't be doing that again. After I finish my races, just get a few hours sleep, even if it's just that, just get something before you drive home, that's for sure. So last thing you want to do is have accidents. So that's just basically number one thing. You got to work on the sleep and work on, ways that you can get that. And that can come through, a few different ways you can do it. What apps you want to download, meditation apps, yoga apps, just there's plenty of them out there. Just, study ways how, that work, find people that you can relate to and enjoy listening to, and, get them to help you with the guided meditation. There's plenty of them online on the apps, and, just start listening to 5, 10, 15, 20 minute meditations, and it will start, the learning process on how to meditate. And then you can start, utilizing it in your races, learn to shut off, go back to the breath. That's, staying present. And like I said in the last video about the monkey mind, you got to learn that when that comes in, because it does, like you'll be listening to a song and it's like deep rainforest, birds, and you're in deep sleep, and then all of a sudden you just catch yourself thinking about something again that's, nothing to, it's pulling you out of meditation, and you're starting to, your brain's thinking of stuff, and you got to just recenter, stay present again, and go back to where you are, the rainforest, and just concentrate on the breath again, so you get those thoughts out of your head. Like, you're always going to have thoughts that pop in, but you got to start thinking of catching yourself aware of it in that monkey mind, and trying to refocus back to what you're doing in the breath, and the, just the mindset of, no, we're sleeping, we're resting, we're doing things, everything steering towards that sleep mode, not things steering towards thinking and burning energy of the mind. So, another good little app I think is like sound healing meditations with singing bowls, flutes, sound waves. They're all good things that can send you into a real deep trance. And I've had some great sleeps in some of the backyard ultras where you might have only been 3-4 minutes, but you were just in lucid dreams, just deep as, and going into a full dream state. So that's what you got to learn to do with your body, with these musics. Allow it to send you into a spiritual deep sleep. So that's how you recover, and that's the importance of, like I was saying, shutting off the mind, doing those aspects that'll help you get into that deep trance, and in that space and that mindset, your body will slowly heal and recover and allow to function more. So that's a big aspect, using those kind of things. I'll go into just the last bit I'm trying to think of with the, towards the sleep depth and ways to do it, or two last things. One will be the gazebo. So for the backyard ultra, you got the gazebo, so set that space up, get yourself a, I like to use the stretcher beds. You can do it in the recliner chairs, but I think it's better if you can lie down in a proper kind of bed, stretcher beds. You don't have to buy a ridiculously expensive one. You can just get them from BCF, Bunnings, whatever. Just a little stretcher bed that you can just put a thin mattress on it, some blankets, sleeping bags, and put a pillow. Having that, so then each lap you come in and you slip your shoes off. For me personally, I take off my wet shirt, put on a dry shirt straight away. So then I know that I'm all ready to go for the next lap, and I just jump straight in, earphones on, music, right, bang, sleep time. And you might only get 3 minutes, whatever it is, but that's the 3 minutes of save you of deep sleep. Whereas if you're still wet, you're still sitting up, like it's not as comfortable. So I think lying down and putting the music on and meditating in that kind of situation is a lot better. Once again, that's just my experience with the blanket and all that kind of stuff, but it works great. The final thing I'll go through, I guess, for me with people is like, what do I do for my training in the sleep depth? Obviously, all of the above, like we just mentioned, with getting used to minimal sleep, running in the middle of the nights, all that kind of thing. They're all things I do. The one thing I really work on these days is my 6.7 kilometer loops. So when I do my 6.7 kilometer loops, when I come back from that, I just cruise along at my pace, whatever I'm doing it. So I get back 45 minutes, whatever it is, 43 minutes. Then I know straight away as soon as I come in, so like I said, wet shirt off, dry shirt on, straight onto the couch or into the chair, wherever I'm doing the meditation, sleep, music on, headphones, and then just start practicing that zoning out, listening to that same sound healing that I'd normally be listening to at the race. So my body gets used to that process and start practicing shutting off. And I'll do that for 10 minutes, like, so it mimics the hour of the lap. And then I'll get up, and even if I wasn't, because these days I'm doing different kind of training as well, but if I'm not going out for another lap, I'd get up, and whether I'm doing stretching, heading into the gym, doing some weight exercises, core exercises, you just practice getting movement again. So you're not just staying asleep from after that. You practice, right, you got your 10 minutes sleep, now you got to get up and function, whether you got to go to work, whatever you got to do, but you just start mimicking that same kind of thing. And if you can do that in the lead up to the events, your body's already adapted to kind of the process that you're doing. That's, in any sport you do, it doesn't matter what you do, it's repetition towards, what you're trying to achieve. Obviously you need the conditioning with heavy kilometers, things like that, but you also need to mimic the exact, situation you're about to put yourself in. That way it's nothing new. Your body's already adapted and ready to go in that aspect. So that's a little bit deeper into it, really. Like, apart from learning the meditation and, those kind of things, it's sleep deprivation is just something, you don't want to really train for it. You want to learn to not have that come up. So, the least amount of sleep deprivation you can get in the race is, that's where you're going to perform the best. So, yeah, you want to get used to those aspects, like I've said, but you basically want to just get used to, not getting there. And these processes will definitely help. Meditation's the number one on the list, that you have to work on and just utilize in your race. So I hope that helped. More to come.